It's now my pleasure to introduce Joshua Singer, Community Garden Specialist in the Washington, D.C. Department of Parks and Recreation, to provide an overview of Washington, D.C.'s Community Gardening Program.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. I have access to share the screen, right, for my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let me pull that up real quick. Everybody see that fine?
Looks great, Josh.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Josh Singer. I work with DC Parks and Rec, I'm a community garden specialist. I've been working in the DC urban ag movement and food justice movement for about a decade or so now, and it's really exciting, a movement. I don't know how much attention we get, but it's pretty cool. I mean, we're doing some really great stuff. The Trust for Public Land has given us, disproportionately, like looking at like New York City numbers, that's always impressive. You guys are amazing and doing great work. But we're a much smaller city, but disproportionately we're doing really well. Like we get the Trust for Public Land gives us like most community gardens per city award multiple years. A lot of our innovation practices around urban composting and food justice, cooperative governance systems and things, we're working on spreading around the country right now. So this presentation is going to be a short overview of just like some of the initiatives that we're working on. We're going to kind of go quick, just because we only have 15 minutes. And then if anyone wants to ask questions and kind of dive deeper into the last 5 minutes of Q&A, we can. And I'll share my email too. All the stuff that we're presenting is like public knowledge. We're happy to kind of help spread a lot of our practices and initiatives and that so please feel free to email me afterwards too if you're wanting to learn more. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. This is a picture of one of our community gardens. It's called Langdon Community Garden. It's one of my favorites because it was a demonstration garden. We built 7 different types of raised beds, just to kind of show everybody all the things you could do, from like wood, cedar, to pressure treated with poly, food grade barriers, to, all recycled plastic, metal. Just it's a really cool, way to like for people trying to figure out what they want to, build in their home. They can come out and check out this community garden. But basically what I'm going to be talking about today is one of the things that we try to do is we try to build full food, what we call food economies. We have a lot of community gardens and production farms, but we also want to kind of create these these economies that give these local communities like sovereign food sovereignty over not only what they can grow, but also we want to create give them opportunities to create jobs and ways to like process food, add value. We want to create markets, community stores, cooperative stores, compost recovery. So what we're really trying to do is create this like entire what we call local food economy, closed loop economies in a lot of our communities. So I'm going to kind of really quickly just go over some of these things. So the first step, we focus a lot on trainings, on helping with webinars and courses and things like that, but also like training people how to be community advocates and how to like find resources throughout our community. Since COVID hit, we were right in the middle of doing a whole bunch of training courses, and COVID hit back in March, so we immediately went out and bought a Zoom account and just like everyone else tried to figure out this Zoom world. But since then we've done about 60 webinars, all free. They've all been recorded. If you want to go to this website, Doug Network, the DC Urban Garden Network, you can see these are all 2-hour classes or 1 to 2 hour classes on a whole variety of topics. We have like basic, if a new gardener and you just want to do some basic learnings and don't want to be overwhelmed, or if you've been gardening for a while and you want to like learn how to do chickens, mushrooms, all these different things, definitely check that out. They're all free, and we just opened up the registration for our spring 12 class course. If everyone wants to join, you don't have to live in DC. We'll have lots of discussion and things. So if you don't want to just watch a recording, you can join us on this. If you just go to DPR.events, DC Parks and Rec, I'll say DPR a lot throughout this presentation. But normally we do a lot of like in-person courses. These are a list of a lot of courses, from teaching people how to build food businesses to herbalism to garden carpentry, to a variety of different, workshops and panels. Like we always do a Black Growers Month panel discussion, a lot of entrepreneurship. And we host a lot. And then we have a lot of partners, nonprofits that we allow to like farm, create farms on our public land. And they, with the requirement of offering a lot of workshops and trainings and a lot of youth programming as well. But on top of that, I mean, there's just so many great things happening. I'm sure this is like New York City. There's like so many great things happening, and so many people have no idea that they're happening. So we put a lot of effort into like transparency and resource websites, what we call community resource networks. The biggest one we do is like the DC Urban Garden Network, where we have this it's a volunteer cooperative website that we have like over 1,000 different resources and organizations categorized if you want to learn how to get involved with what. But we also do a newsletter, a pretty thorough, very ugly but like thorough newsletter every 2 weeks with like over 100 different trainings and workshops and jobs and things happening. So and we have over 10,000 viewers right now. So we put a lot of effort to try to connect people with all the resources that are happening. And we have additional ones like People School of DC is a social justice website that tries to connect people to social justice issues. Humane DC tries to connect people with how to avoid factory farms and things in the area and all their options, how to be responsible consumers. So we put a lot of time into just trying to bring awareness to everything that's happening. And then we focus on one of our biggest ones is production. We focus a lot on like community, giving people personal plots, at community gardens and backyards and things in school gardens, and then also working on production farms. So we have like 35 community gardens, which it's not the same as like was it like 500 community gardens in New York City. It's very impressive, but we are a much smaller city, so it's disproportionately. I mean, we have a lot of every community's got a garden, some kind of farm project. But on top of that, we also we have what we call communal farms, because just to be honest, sometimes we oversell urban ag, like, oh, it's so easy, grow a bunch of food. It's hard, and a lot of people fail. A lot of our sites aren't as productive as they could be. So we started this program called communal farms, where us, like people that have been farming for a long time, we actually farm. You make sure the farms, production farms, make sure they're productive, and then anyone can come and harvest whenever they want. We have produce giveaways. They can do field trips and things like that. So it's like a farm that you don't have to worry about maintaining, basically. So we also have a lot of these communal farms as well as an opportunity for people that don't have a lot of time. I mean, gardening takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of knowledge. It's just a lot of times it's a privilege, so it's so we're trying to make opportunities for people that don't have that but still want to get that fresh access and food. And then we have what we call partner urban farms. That's where we give nonprofits land, free utilities, free land, oftentimes some money to start up and build a farm. And then they build a farm, whether it's an educational farm or most of them are production farms, with hopes of just increasing food access into local communities. This is a 3-acre farm that we're in a process of building right now, from the it's called The Well. One of our coolest farms is the Kelly Miller Farm. It was just shouted out on the Daily Show. The Trevor Noah gave it a shout out. We just had the second gentleman, Doug something. I had to look it up. I was like, what is the second gentleman? But it's the vice president's husband just came out last week to visit it. So we have a lot of these really cool production farms. But at the same time, we're trying to do this model because a lot of times we only have a certain amount of capacity, and if you're not very intentional about these projects, you can actually end up dividing communities and harming communities. So we do this model called the multi-partnership model, where we try to each farm needs to have multiple partners, for one, to like increase capacity and services they can provide the community, but also to give more accountability. Like we were very intentional. We spent 1 to 2 years outreaching and working with the community to find the right partners and make sure the community really wants these gardens, because sometimes the communities don't want ag spaces, or they want them but they don't want exclusive ag spaces, which a lot of times urban ag can be very exclusive if you're not intentional about it. So adding multiple partners that all really care about the community and are from the community really increases that accountability. So that model has been working really well with us. And then we do, we have a lot of, really hard to farm spaces, so we're coming up with some really innovative processes. Like we had this one farm that we just could not get water to. So last year we drilled urban well. It's the first, solar power urban well in DC. And it's been working really, really well. It's at the Fort Stanton. I'm hoping to build more of them. If anyone's like got a spot that they can't, connect to the water, definitely let us, reach out to me. I can help you with specs and stuff on how to do a solar well. And then we're really pushing the rooftop farms because DC is like #1 for the green roofs, always disproportionately because we're a small city, but we're like #1. For green roofs, green roofs are great, but rooftop farms are so much better. Like green roofs are like at 2 to 4 inch, like soilless. A lot of times it's that rocky, pebbly, like expanded shell media, and you put like sedums and desert plants and stuff. But a lot of times it's a lot of maintenance. It doesn't soak up that much stormwater. They're supposed to be made to soak up stormwater, and then they cost a lot to maintain. So we've been trying to push, to instead of expand that 2 to 4 to about a foot of soilless media, add some compost, and then all of a sudden we're farming on the roof. And we have community partners that are taking care of it instead of like expensive government contractors. So we're launching a whole bunch. We've been because we build a lot of new rec centers every year, so we're starting to put rooftop farms instead of green roofs on them. Then we have, like I'm sure like in New York, every garden's got a huge, waiting list. Sometimes it takes a couple years to get a garden plot. So the demand is definitely more than our capacity. So we've been working on different, programs to try to find, match people that need garden spaces to garden spaces that need gardeners. And so we partnered with our DC's got a really great school garden network that's run by OSSE, Office of State Superintendent of Education. We have over 100 school gardens, but most of them in the summer aren't used because the schools aren't open in the summer, so they just stay derelict. And then in August, the teacher comes and it's like, I gotta start a garden from scratch in August, which is not easy, so we've been doing this shared program where we reach out to people that are looking for garden spaces and can't find it, and we match them mainly with school gardens during the summer, and they'll grow the food, they can get to keep the food, but then they hand off a fully functioning garden to the school in August, so they can run with it. So it's definitely a win-win. And we're also we're expanding it to home yards for like people that seniors that have home yards but don't have the capacity to do gardens. We're matching them with people that can come and do the gardens and then share the produce, and people with like mobility issues, we're trying to match them as well. So that's one of our ways. This is an example of what these are all weeds. This is a school garden in the summer that just if no one's there, it's just a waste. And then we have a lot of garden support systems. We have a garden tool share with like, a whole bunch of power tools, wood chippers, tillers, cider press for people I want to make some cider. And we have greenhouse. We have a couple greenhouses that we turn into cooperatives where nonprofits and schools can come and grow their seedlings in exchange for offering additional seedlings to our low income programs and our helping out with program additional classes and stuff. We also have environmental programs, a whole bunch of beekeeping programs around the city. We have tons. I don't know about with New York City, but we have a requirement to build a lot of like bioretention, stormwater, sites like rain gardens and native plant pollinators. Whenever we build a new park or whatever, but we don't have anyone to maintain them. So they just become these invasive seed banks. It's just like it's awful because no one takes care of them. So we've been starting this program where we're training community members on how to maintain native plants and identify and remove invasive plants, and they're actually adopting these stormwater features around the city. And then we have, processing and marketing. So, a lot of what we grow is just, it goes, to personal homes, but a lot of it, are from food businesses and nonprofits that are trying to actually, create these food businesses and create local food economies. So we have a lot of programs that kind of support that. It's really excited about this new rec center that we're building. It's going to be done early next year. But we went through a whole series of community meetings and got the community really excited about one, a community commercial kitchen community incubator space where we can actually host nonprofits or for-profits or whatever that are trying to start food businesses, and we can give them free space to start their businesses, and we'll give them trainings and things like that. And then in the same rec center, we're going to have a community food co-op, a community store, because we will have a retail space that we're going to organize as a community cooperative market. Because the idea is, like, we have a lot of food insecurity, and we're really trying to, we put a lot of effort into trying to build, brick and mortar, grocery stores and things, but that's really hard for a number of different reasons. So we're trying to, we have rec centers in every community. So we're trying to, build these rec centers to actually, have grocery stores and have community incubator spaces, but take it off a free market. Like, we're not going to charge rent. I mean, we want these to be common goods, like parks. Like, grocery stores should be like parks. We should be investing in every community, that every community have a grocery store. So we're working on that, as well as we have tons of teaching kitchens and things that aren't commercial grade. I mean, we could educate people, but we can't sell it. So that's why this will be our first commercial kitchen that we're going to be building. And then we have, we've been working on this model, having these food cooperative retrofitted shipping containers. So we're in the process of, hopefully, and then by the end of this year, we're going to build, install our first one. So we have different designs. So for a lot of, neighborhoods that don't have grocery stores, we can actually, install one of these. We can connect them with local urban farms, as well as, having, doing bulk purchasing and cooperative, grocery store models. And then we have lots of different ways to actually get the food into communities, from like markets and CSAs. But it's really been, since COVID hit, it's been really cool seeing how our partners have been have really innovated a lot of these. This is a stock photo, but a lot of our partners, I couldn't find an actual photo in time for this presentation, but a lot of our partners have turned their markets into drive-through, markets, where they can literally just drive up, pre-order something, or order something from a car and then get it straight in. So it's been really cool watching that, kind of all this stuff adapt to COVID. We have a lot of, we have this really great Black farmers markets where we partner with local Black farms, urban farms, as well as like rural, mid-Atlantic rural Black farms, and they partner to create these like really awesome, CSAs that it's a really, really cool program. And then we've been doing a lot of mutual aid, because we have a lot of entrepreneurship programs, and we have a lot of food businesses that are working with us. When COVID hit, and like the World Central Kitchen, had all that money to kind of hire people to put, get meals in the community, a lot of our partners just ran with it. Like Dreaming Out Loud, one of our best partners, I mean, they produced over 200,000 meals just last year alone into these local communities. So we really had, because of that infrastructure that we've been building, we were able to just run with it during this pandemic. And then the last part I want to talk about is community resource reclamation. So this is one of the things I really enjoy, because urban composting, if you don't know, there's a huge difference between rural composting and urban composting. And there's a lot of people trying to push rural composting, like, let's just compost in the pile in the middle of the city. And we need to stop that, because you're going to piss off your neighbors. I mean, there's, people in DC, I mean, there's more rats than people in DC. I mean, people care a lot more about rats than diverting organic waste, from the dump. So I mean, I've spent decades just trying to research and trying and building this new program. And ultimately what we designed this critter-proof and smell-proof compost bin, and then we designed these cooperative models where communities can actually take it over. We have a simple training, and they can actually operate it. There's roles, like managers and members, and then everyone has to participate and help process the compost once a month. They're able to do it. They're able to mix food scraps, with our local, garden waste. And we have, 56 of these sites around the city, all, operating on their own, about, 1,500, composters that are all doing this cooperative model. And it's really, really cool model. And we have a lot of new practices that we developed around urban composting, on how to prevent smells, how to not trap rats, how to efficiently, because it is a completely different system than if you ever taken like U.S. Compost council or whatever, or one of those, official USDA trainings. Don't use those practices in the city. They don't work, and they cause horrific rat situations. But we've came up with really cool practices and best practices and models and stuff that I'm happy to share. We're in the middle of launching this app that was that you could pull up as like a Google Suits app that you could pull up on your phone, and you can keep track of how much you're composting. So each member can keep track of how much they weight they compost a year. Each site can keep track of it, and then then we're going to make competitions and highlight, who's doing the best, which site's doing the best, and all that stuff. And it's also a great way to capture best practices and troubleshoot issues. We were right in the middle of finishing it when COVID hit and all my funds froze. But I should get funds back next year. So we're going to finish this, and this will be a public app that anyone can use. It's basically finished. We did a pilot round, and we have all this feedback, and we're in the middle of incorporating that when my contract got canceled. But it'll be ready soon. But the pilot went really well. People were really excited about it. It's really cool to actually see, how much you can compost yourself. How much waste you're diverting. Because sending organic waste to the dump is one of the leading causes of greenhouse gases. So we really, and at the same time, we're like breaking the bank trying to buy compost for our urban sites. So it's definitely a win-win. And then the last thing we'll talk about is we launched a whole bunch of food recovery initiatives. I'm really excited to see just how much attention food recovery has gotten, our food waste has gotten in the last 5 years or so. But it's become this huge issue where we're just realizing, especially during COVID, as we're watching all these farms till in all this produce, and at the same time we're reading about or watching 5-hour-long lines to food banks and food shortages. So I think people are starting to realize that we can't continue these current systems that of our food systems that we have, and we need to create more efficient and effective and equal food systems. So we launched this food recovery network where we got together about 5 years ago. We got about 50 different organizations working on food recovery initiatives. We got them all together, and we've been working on overcoming food barriers. Like we passed a legislation that it's really cool stuff from we no longer have to worry about the best sell by dates, which are completely arbitrary and stupid, and then we don't we're extending the legal agreement, because right now the Good Samaritan Act gives you liability if you want to donate food to a nonprofit, but we're actually extending that where businesses and farms can donate directly to people in need and still have that liability coverage. So we're working on a whole bunch of different initiatives and stuff around food recovery. But I think that's about, I actually wasn't, I was going to keep track of time, but I wasn't, but I imagine I'm hitting about 15 minutes. So this is the last slide. If people, I'll stick around for some questions if you want to dive a little bit deeper into that, or if anyone wants to reach out to me later. This is the second gentleman, Douglas Imhoff. I feel bad. They sent me the article. I'm like, who is this guy? And then I was like, oh, this is cool. But he was visiting one of our farms last week. So just sticking that in there. But yeah, I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions for the rest of the time.
Thanks, Josh. We have received an overwhelming response to your projects and initiatives. So people are loving it. So can you please talk more about how your program builds those partnerships, and how can you make those agreements happen between the city program and the different partners? How does that happen?
Yeah, the main thing I'm doing is because it was most of the time it's just been me, and then we recently picked up another 2 employees that's been helping out, but so I only have a limited amount of capacity. So the main thing I do is I create what we call volunteer cooperatives. Almost everything we do is community managed, where where I'll get the permission from our government. Sometimes I have to get new regs and things depending on if we're working with for-profits, for nonprofits and stuff, and I'll get that set up the programs and get approval from the government, and then I can go out and organize these cooperatives around where I organize communities. We'll teach them different bylaws and governance structures, and then we allow them to manage these resources. So all of our community gardens, our farms, our tool share, our greenhouse cooperatives, our compost cooperatives, all of these things are managed by volunteer groups. So I'm just kind of overseeing it. I'll help train them, I'll help establish it, and then I just troubleshoot as we go forward. So that's the main thing. It's just using that model, because we don't have I have a very small budget. I have a very small capacity. So the main thing we're trying to do is we're trying to get these resources. But I have a lot of land, and I have a lot so the main thing we're trying to do is get these resources like land and space and rec centers to do grocery stores and incubator kitchens. I'm trying to get those into the hands of the community and then train them how to actually operate by themselves.
So related to that, how do you get the funding, or how these partners get the funding for the projects?
Yeah, I mean, I used to get, when I first started, I got the funding from the city. They used to give me capital funding to build, farms and stuff, and that was easy, a lot easier. But now I don't have that, and they stopped giving me funding a while ago, which actually is kind of cool because it's forced us to be very more intentional and create better projects. So we need to look for the right partners that can not only know how to work in communities, but also can raise the funds themselves. We have to, or if we're going for a grant, we need to, create a exciting project, not just build a farm and then see who wants to come. We're creating these projects as the community, as a community, with the community, and because that, we're creating less projects, but they're much more, community invested projects. They're much more exciting projects. They're much more successful projects because we have to be much more intentional, because we got to get the funding. Well, there's two ways I get funding. We have to get the partner to raise it, or we find grants, or like I said, we still have funding to build rec centers. We build or renovate 1 or 2 rec centers every year. So I'll been going to these community meetings for the rec centers, and I'll pitch ideas like rooftop farms and incubator spaces and stuff. And the community's they're really excited about that stuff. It's just no one's ever pitched it to them before. So I'll get them excited, and then that will end up in the design. And then like the Congress Heights, it's like a $20 million budget. So it wasn't a big deal to just add this, commercial kitchen and grocery store space. So those are kind of 2 ways I get funding for my projects.
Thanks, Josh. Last question. How did your program adapt to the pandemic?
Yeah, well, we talked about a couple of things. Everything went, immediately went online. Which we in the first 3 months of the pandemic, we recorded over 60 webinars. And then put them all online, made them all free. Because I felt like there was a huge need. I think people realized how really awful our food systems are, during, hopefully we realize it not, before the crisis, but a lot of people realized it, during this crisis. So there was a lot of push for that. And also just a lot of push on how to, stay sane during, shutdowns. So we actually, we pitched it to the mayor to allow them to consider our gardens essential, not only as an extra source of food, but also as, a therapeutic source, a community source, so people wouldn't lose that touch of community. We created, COVID safe practices, masks, social distancing, all that stuff. But we allowed all of our gardens to stay open the whole pandemic, and that was really great. A lot of people got a lot out of that, because for a lot of people that was their only source anymore for social experiments, our community, but then we had to adapt all our markets to be COVID safe. I really this wasn't my idea, it was the partner's idea, but that drive-through markets, which I'm sure other people are doing. I'm sure we didn't invent it, but it was really cool to see. It's the first time DC has been doing drive-through farmers markets and drive-through CSA pickups, and that's been really exciting to see. Yeah.
Very exciting to know. There are a lot of questions, so we're gonna be moving this conversation to Slack. If there are specific questions for Josh, there's an email on the screen. Now, again, thanks, Josh.